One. Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, taking care of business on Canada's podcast network. Joining me today, Dan Kelly, President, CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thanks, Dan, for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
Okay, and it's the start of Small Business Week, too. So we're going to talk about some issues that small business owners are facing today. You put out a news release, CFIB put out a news release this morning on the number of businesses, thousands apparently, that are now going to be ineligible for between $10,000 to $20,000 on a forgivable loan from the federal government. Can you maybe explain just a little bit about that, Dan, and what that means and the why behind it?
Yeah, no, look, this is a super important conversation, and it is Small Business Week. Look, small businesses are still in really tough straits in many instances, coming out of 2.5 years of pandemic restrictions, and now facing huge number of increased costs. On top of that, a legacy of debt that they've taken on. Yeah. A chunk of that debt, Mario, is in the form of a CEBA loan, the Canada Emergency Business Account Loan. This was a super helpful program that the federal government fashioned. It was one of the very first pandemic-related support programs that provided small businesses with a $40,000 loan in order to try to make it through what was hoped to be a month or two of pandemic restrictions. Yeah. That loan program ultimately was expanded a couple of times, changed a few times. Ultimately, there was, you were able to get up to $60,000 in a loan. And they went to 900,000 businesses. Mario, you should know that there's only 1.1 million small businesses with paid staff across Canada. So yeah. Virtually all the business community got a CEBA loan, other than those that slipped through the cracks, unfortunately. But of those that received that loan, there were about 50,000, we believe, that are now getting letters from their bank saying that they didn't qualify in the first place. They're getting this letter over 2 years later, after they had received the loan, spent the loan, now being told, sorry, you don't qualify in retrospect, and so you need to fully repay that. And one of the key benefits of that loan program is that you get to keep $10,000 of that loan, of the $40,000 variety, if you repay the balance. If you repay $30,000, you get to keep $10,000. So that's a huge advantage to businesses. And now that those 50,000 business owners are being told they're not going to get that benefit. Super, super unfair to be doing this at this 11th hour, and we believe has some huge negative consequences ahead.
Let's talk about that. What's the impact going to be on small businesses because of this?
Well, look, we don't believe that many of them will make it as a result of this forgivable portion being withdrawn. It's already very difficult for businesses to survive. We've seen business bankruptcies tick up. We've talked about that already, you and I. I worry that this is going to be enough to push some of them into business failure. And I actually think it's kind of dumb on the part of the federal government to be pushing this at this late stage. Right now, there's an incentive for businesses to pay off their loan, that $30,000 that you have to repay in order to keep the $10,000. That's a pretty big incentive. You take that off the table, I suspect that there are going to be businesses that are not in a position to repay it at all, and the government may get less of its money back as a result of the action it's taken. That 50,000, look, we take no issue. If there are some in that group that are fraudsters that deliberately put false information forward, or were not business owners at all, but just scammers, we have no problem with the government going after those guys. But within that 50,000 category, I suspect that there are a ton that have not been able to respond to the request for more information that was given them a few months ago, or didn't get the letter from their bank that was questioning this, or perhaps missed out on this by some technical reason. And as a result, they're going to be losing that key benefit of the CEBA loan.
Can you talk, Dan, a little bit about what your latest numbers are when it comes to normal sales for these businesses compared to pre-pandemic?
Yeah, it's not good. Only about just over 40% of businesses tell us that they are back to normal sales. So over half of Canada's business community have not even gotten back to pre-pandemic sales volumes. Then you add the $150,000 average CFIB, the $150,000 total debt that the businesses have had to take on to survive the pandemic, and you add the shortage of labor, the huge cost increases on every line of the budget, the tax hikes that government has proposed in EI, CPP, carbon tax, liquor taxes. This is an ugly time on the eve of a recession to be taking this action against small business owners and doing it as Small Business Week starts. This just feels very cruel.
Yeah. So we start Small Business Week. Tell me what what are some of the recommendations, I guess, CFIB is putting forward to the federal government these days to help mitigate, I guess, a lot of the losses and the challenges that they still continue to face in that community.
Well, for one, we believe that the issue we were just discussing a second ago with the CEBA loan, that group of 50,000 should be given the same forgivable component. Again, you have to repay 75% of the loan to get to keep that anyway. It's not just free cash that was given to business owners. Secondly, on CEBA, even those that qualify are worried about the deadline of repaying the full balance by the end of 2023. We've suggested that be pushed to the end of 2024. We've also suggested that 50% of the loan, so if you have the $40,000 CEBA loan, $20,000 you get to keep. If you have the $60,000 loan, we've suggested that you get to keep $30,000, 50% of it. That would be a welcome change. We're saying to the federal government, they've already announced the EI rates are going up for this at the beginning of this year, but we're saying you should hold the line on the Canada Pension Plan premium hike, or at the very least, introduce some form of small business job credit that would lower the amount of payroll taxes that small firms pay. We need more action on the shortage of labor, particularly with the temporary and permanent immigration systems, to try to get the Canadian marketplace back to some degree of normalcy. These are some of the steps that we're suggesting the federal governments take. A big file for us is on the credit card side too. Governments did promise a reduction in credit card processing fees, and we're really urging the Deputy Prime Minister to move forward in the fall economic statement to make some progress on that front. It's been long coming. We haven't seen any action.
All right, super. Thanks, Dan, for joining us again today.
Anytime, Mario.
All right, that was Dan Kelly, President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, taking care of business on Canada's Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us today.